Thank you, Bill, and thank you to the Transplant Life Foundation. And I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you to everyone. It's been such a privilege and a pleasure to just walk around and see fellow transplant recipients, donors, donor families, everyone involved in this space. It truly is a unique space, I think. And I always think about whether transplantation is a disease, a condition, a treatment. What is it? It is different than many other areas in medicine. It is a combination of so much. It's a combination of surgery, of immunology, of altruism, of miracles. And I think we're all so grateful to so many people. Because of that, I think we do a lot for others. And that's the kind of atmosphere that I feel here today, and I felt yesterday, and I think the whole Games really exudes the feeling that we want to help each other, lean upon each other, and support. So, not far away from that is happiness, right? Because I think if you do good, you feel better. The opposite of happiness is not just depression. I think the opposite of happiness is bitterness, it's guilt, it's shame. And I think these Games are all about the happiness, but also about the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that topic today, health and happiness, and how they belong together. But as Bill said, I'm Swedish, I'm a doctor, I'm many different things, and I do need to introduce myself a little bit and put in perspective my story into maybe similar to many of yours, and I want to share that with you. Go to the next slide. So I've been through a lot, as all of you have. I'm not unique. I'm one of many, but. As mentioned, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and being diagnosed with a chronic illness at a young age, I think it takes something from you. It takes that feeling of invincibility, of feeling that you can do anything when you suddenly have to manage a condition that takes so much from you. And that's what happened to me at a young age, and it also gave me something, because I try to see every hurdle as an opportunity. And I think diabetes gives you discipline. You have to suddenly think about what you're eating. You have to think about how to exercise. And every moment of your life is suddenly managed. It takes away a little bit of your childhood from all of those of you who've had diabetes or have diabetes. And, one of the biggest, I think, wins, and it might seem small, but when I got my pancreas transplant, I suddenly felt very free again. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't have to think about every moment of my life where I was worried about going low or going high in blood sugar. And although the kidney that I got in 2009, which was an altruistic gift from my father, it saved my life, as many of you have gone through end-stage kidney disease or end-stage heart disease. I mean, even the word end-stage, of course, is tough, right? It's end of what? And then you get that kidney or heart or liver or lung or intestines or pancreas, and it's suddenly a new beginning. So the kidney saved my life, but the pancreas made it worth living again. And it gave me an opportunity to do so much, not just live, but to give life. And I'm truly privileged to be here today, to have my daughter here as well. So Liv is here, and she's only 6, but she's been putting up a lot with me. But I'm really, that's my biggest joy. So I want to move quickly away from my story and go into happiness. So if we go to the next slide, Jean-Marie, please. So happiness, what is happiness? If you go back to the Greek gods, there's a Greek goddess called Hedone. And Hedone was all about pleasure and happiness. And hedonia is really the feeling of that. It's removal of anything of depression. And, we're all trying to get to that place. It's a place where I think if we go to the next slide, when we're young, we're often there. This is interesting for a scientist like me. This has been studied a lot, right? There's a U-shaped curve of happiness during our life cycle. When we're young, we're often happy. And that happiness, continues until about the age of 18. But between the age of 35 and 60, we're the least happy. So that's a period when we are productive, we're working, but we're also facing challenges such as, relationship ends, tough, maybe monetary challenges, also health challenges. And for some reason, those years that are so important for human beings, we're the least happy between 35 and 60. And then it changes again if we're not sick. Like if we're sick and we continue to get sicker, then it's tough. But even sick people can be very happy if we have an attitude of hope and of helping others. So happiness is not just linked to health. It's linked to many different things. But I think it's really incredible if we look at the difference between a young child and someone who's still young, 40 years old. A young child at 4, laughs on average, 400 or 300 times a day. And a 40-year-old, about 4 times. I mean, if we could just double that and laugh 8 times, it would be better. So this ability to laugh at the small things and be happy about little accomplishments, that's one thing that I think my hurdles have given me. I try to find real pleasure and happiness even in little details, and I do think that makes you feel better, and it's been proven. If you look at the next slide, you'll see that happiness is linked to better physical shape. And they're also linked back, of course. If you are healthier, you're also happier. But there is a certain, drive of hormones, and, you can measure it in your body. Blood pressure goes down, your, heart feels better, your stress levels come down when you're happy. So happy people have better so-called biometrics. Like when we go to our physicians and they measure all these biometrics, they're often better when we are happy. The other thing that happiness does is that it makes you make better choices. When you're happy, you want to take care of yourself. You want to take care of others. When you're sad, you that's when you see these kind of Hollywood movies and you see a sad person, they're always eating ice cream, right? They're sitting there eating ice cream or chocolate or, spending money on shopping that you may not need. Depression and sadness, bitterness, guilt, shame, all those different emotions lead to so-called poor behavior, if that is what we can assess it as. So happiness makes you, want to sing. It makes at least me want to jump of joy and maybe climb a mountain or two. Do something challenging because I feel like I'm more up here, euphoria, back to those big feelings. So we want to kind of achieve that in some way. But let's put it in perspective of the journey we're all on, right? The journey of life. And you've now seen that U-shaped curve, and we want to change that. We don't want to be so low when we're in this productive years. We want to kind of bring it back to when we were children or when we're old enough to kind of enjoy life again. So what is that about? Are we spending our life working and then we can retire and be happy again? I hope that's not what life is about. But if we put the perspective again back and think about end-stage disease and going into transplantation, right? The things that make you happy when you're young, if I look at it from my perspective, before I got type 1 diabetes, happiness could be getting an ice cream. I know that Liv likes chocolate. When she gets a chocolate, she's happy, right? You're happy. But when you get type 1 diabetes, you can't have chocolate or ice cream anymore. So that kind of eliminates that reason for happiness. So there might be other things that make you happy. And For me, during my time with type 1 diabetes, one of my biggest drivers was to show every person that I could do everything that those who did not have type 1 diabetes could do. So my happiness was replaced by competitiveness and accomplishments and feeling a little bit less than everyone else. I think everyone who's had a disease that they've been told that now you have to manage it every single day, they feel, why me? What? And then you start feeling bitterness, right? Why is that person who didn't do anything more than I did for others, or, accomplished anything more than I did, why don't they have it? That's a feeling that begins to get you lower, right? That removes you from happiness. So what can we do to kind of remove those feelings that drive you into a pit versus a high? So for me, the type 1 diabetes was a period of difficulties when I kind of had to find other reasons to be happy. And what always came back for me was relationships, right? You had a person that you connected with, a person that you could share with, a person that you could teach, or a person who could support you. So that was something that was important to me. And because I spent 20 years with type 1 diabetes without sharing with anyone except for my very close family that I had the disease, I became lonely. I mean, it was a lonely time because not many people knew who I was really. And that changed with my transplant, because with my transplant, suddenly everyone knew I had a dysfunctional pancreas. I had a bad kidney. And yes, that was a big so-called failure, end stage, or kidney failure, or which takes a toll on your emotional sense. But then when that was out there, I can suddenly connect with others. And I realized that it's so much more than the individual. It's not just about what you do that puts you in that situation, but it's so much else. So going from diabetes to transplant, there was a period of time for me when it was all about a fight. I had to fight every day to stay alive. You had to kind of take it one day at a time and see that maybe the happiness was when you enjoyed a meal or you felt good. Like you felt good and you could go for a walk. And that made me happy. And I think what always saved me from giving up was to see everything in very small steps and taking that one step at a time and applauding myself. It sounds very un-Swedish, because if you know Swedish people, we're supposed to be all the same and never say that we're good. It's very opposite of America, but that's the Swedish philosophy. So to say to yourself, well done, is a big deal for a Swedish person. But I try to do it a lot because I do think it's important. And also to tell people around me, because everyone loves affirmation, and not fake affirmation, but real affirmation. And I think we need to be nicer to everyone around us and look at the things. I think go back to what children do. When there's something new and something that they find pretty, they acknowledge it and they say it freely. And it makes, I think, another person happy when you tell them that, oh, wow, you look good today. And, is that a new haircut? Yeah, that, and it looks great on you. I think affirming something that another person has thought about and really put in place makes that person happy. And the ultimate happiness is, I think, when you see that another person has a smile on their face and you made that happen, right? Isn't that amazing? And that's the privilege of doctors, in some sense, that they can take a person who's sick and make them healthy again. Nurses, everyone in healthcare. And I think when doctors and nurses and everyone around them lose that and it becomes a number, that is when healthcare becomes a machine and not the personal, stories that we all share here at the Games. So let's go to the next one. So transplantation, again, this is a condition where we are going again from end-stage disease to a new take on life. And we have an organ now that we want to take care of. And I've spoken to so many of you, and We say our kidneys, our hearts, our livers, our intestines, our pancreas, they're our babies. We want to take care of that organ so much because we have another chance, right? So now we are motivated to do everything right. Even if we didn't do anything wrong last time because it was just our bodies and our genetics and our environments that pushed us in this, but still we're trying to do as much as we can to make this work this time around. And I think that drives more happiness versus, of course, the depression and the sadness and the anxiety and end-stage disease. So we're already seeing an uptick, even though it's not 100% in transplant, because we still have hurdles. We have our medications, we have potentially our complications and our side effects that we, all share. And we need to do better there. And that's where I look to the scientists and the companies that are here and are working on developing better drugs, better ways to prevent things from going wrong. But at least we have an opportunity with transplantation. But so how do we find that happiness in the small moments? And I'm going to share a video from our Transplant Life community, which is very much partnered with the Transplant Life Foundation. It's a digital community that you can join and share your story and be supported by others. But Jean Marie, if you want to click to our video here.
What makes me happy? Dancing, yoga, biking, having the wind in my hair, living life with childlike wonder, gardening, flowers, just being around loved ones and having a close-knit community.
The little things make me happy, like sitting outside, listening to the birds, and drinking my coffee.
What makes me happy is doing my volunteerism.
What makes me happy is being able to run, walk, and swim at the beach.
What makes me happy is being able to travel. I'm looking forward to sharing all of these new places with my family. Happiness for me is travel and exploring our wonderful country.
Things that make me the most happy in life are still the small things, like waking up in the morning, watching my kid grow up, or reading a new book, because these are the things I fought for the most when I had my transplant. The normal, everyday things.
You asked what makes me happy. Hiking to waterfalls makes me happy. Happy Transplant Games!
I know what makes me happy, being alive. My transplant has enabled all that and so much more.
So for me, I choose to be happy because I've had so many things go wrong and now I want them to go right. So choose happiness.
So I choose happiness. That's what I said in the video. And I think it is an active choice. I think when you wake up in the morning and you try to be happy that day, you see the positives in people, at least it's a start. I don't want to be a Pollyanna and say that you can just choose to be happy, because there can be so many things that you have to be angry at. But I think being angry is better than being bitter. Reacting to something and then realizing that it was just another hurdle, but at least you tried, is better than just giving up. And I think the fact that we're all here means that we didn't give up. And we can't give up, because now, as recipients and those of you who are donors and donor families and who are working in this space, we owe it to everyone who gave up an organ, and the families who decided to give up an organ. We owe it to them not to ever give up, right? We got to try. And that's all we can do. But at least try with a smile. At least start that way. So the conquest of happiness has been something that has been debated and been analyzed for a very long time, right? And while I was preparing for this talk, I found this book and text by Bertrand Russell, who I find to be an incredible philosopher and really, really interesting writer. And he wrote about this in 1938, which was a very tough period. It's, and not so different from now. There's so many things going on in the world, wars and different conflicts. But he talked about the absolute opposites of happiness and named them, as I mentioned, meaninglessness. If we feel that we don't have a meaning, what we do doesn't matter, how can we be happy, right? If we're just that one little chip that is in the system and we can't make a difference. I think we're all here because we believe we can make a difference with a walk, with a run, with a jump, with a, participating in these sports, or just being here and collecting the pins, right? We're making a difference because we're showing up. And I think showing up is 90%. So meaninglessness is really terrible. Competition. I mean, to me, competition has always been positive. I was a competitive tennis player and it gave me pleasure. And I still am very competitive. But I think the best competitors, and I don't know if any of you listened to the Roger Federer speech. He gave a commencement speech at Dartmouth. And he said, as a professional tennis player, you win only a little bit more than 50%. If you're a top 20, 50% of all the shots. But you win maybe 90% of your matches. So, competitiveness means that you may lose a lot. But for those who are truly good at whatever they're doing, they just win the right shots. But competitiveness can get us to the next level in whatever we're doing. It doesn't have to be tennis. It can be, again, succeeding with our organ one more day and succeeding to take our pills. Because sometimes we just don't want to take them because we know that when we take our pills, we may have to go to the bathroom 2 hours later, right? I mean, many of you know that. MMF is a tough drug. So, but we're still doing it because we want to get to a place the next day. Boredom is another one. I think being bored is, I don't accept that. I think there is always something that can challenge you and not make you bored. Being bored to me is laziness, but many of us today are bored. And again, with digital and social media and screens all over the place, yes, can be bored, but we can find things that motivates us. And I think that's up to us to really be motivated. Fatigue. I mean, fatigue to me is the hardest one to combat as someone who's living with a chronic illness, because sometimes you're just tired and you're tired of fighting. So I think we have to allow ourselves to rest and to allow ourselves to take that little rest and just say, okay, I need a break. And that break could be shorter or longer, but we'll come back. But allow ourselves to take a rest and not always keep going. That is important. And listen to our bodies. So to me, again, going back to what really truly has, over these years of my life and all my different challenges, but also my accomplishments, what always got me to a point of happiness, number one, was love. Knowing that I could love someone and that person would love me back. That's the ultimate love. But love in relationships, love extends to relationships. For happiness, for health, relationships have been found in scientific literature to be the number one driver of successful health, recovery, and happiness. And I'm not talking about everyone not having any disease, but just because they have relationships. Depending on where you are on the kind of gradient of health, if you have successful relationships around you and you reach out to them and you leverage them, that's how you can at least feel better, whatever stage you are. So I think love extends to relationships. Freedom. I mean, we are privileged to live in a country, so-called freedom, right? It's not like this in every part of the world. It's not. And freedom of doing what we would like to do. Everyone, of course, we can get better. We can get better when it comes to gender, race, all the different diversity parts of what constitutes the population. We can do better, but at least we are not where we used to be, right? We are not, and I think that's freedom is truly important. Independence. Independence to me is often linked to the independence from drugs and things to even survive every day. So independence is an incredibly important one. And I link independence to education. If we're educated and we have something that we know we can do well, we can become more independent. So independent is, again, a gradient of where we are in our life. But those three ones are always driving me toward happiness. When I feel freedom being on a mountain or doing sports, or being able to do what I'd like to do and not be put in a box and be told this is what you need to do. Independence of not needing to do the same thing every single day, and being allowed to speak what I want to say, and then having relationships around me that make me feel fulfilled. That's what makes me happy.